Hi, everybody. I'm DJ Sixsmith. Welcome to Sit Down. Jeff Hobbs here with us. He's got his brand new book, Show Them You're Good, from Simon & Schuster. Jeff, really nice to meet you. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Thanks so much for your time and everything here.
Of course, you've written some really interesting books in the past. And to me, this one's fascinating because, again, you're kind of looking at people who are a little bit on the outskirts of society, but are obviously coming to terms with a really important time in their life with these four kids in high school, trying to go to college in LA. So what was it like writing this book?
I wrote for the paperback. I got a chance to write sort of an afterword about 4 years. About 4 years after I actually did this research with the kids, where I spent about a year going to school every day with high school seniors in the 2016-2017 school year, and I was raising my own young kids at that time. And long story short, it was a lot of fun, and it gave me a lot of hope, which I guess was sort of the intention to begin with. So I was glad it panned out.
What were some of the biggest surprises about your research and just the experience of going back to school as well?
Um, well, surprises, I guess, was the main one was that any of these kids wanted to hang out with me. And during a year when they were applying to college, kids in very different spaces and schools, a year when they really didn't have that much time, that they wanted to volunteer to devote a significant amount of time each week to sort of being together in a round table kind of format and just talk about what was going on in their lives. um, I still don't know why they wanted to put themselves forward that way. And then, when you're my age, middle age, I guess, maybe early middle age, my kids might argue where I am on the spectrum. You kind of start to put people in boxes, and there's a lot of talk about millennials and different generations. And I guess I was surprised how kind of worldly these kids were, and how wise and how funny and kind of touching they were. Nothing at all the way we tend to characterize millennials or Gen Y or Gen Z.
Well, I'm a millennial, so that's music to my ears right there. I really like that. And I'm sure people are really going to enjoy this book. When you think about what you did here, what were some of the biggest things you wanted to accomplish in terms of writing this story and putting it out there for people to consume?
Well, I mainly just wanted to make it human, again, with the idea of presumptions and labels. It's interesting because when I first sat down, so it's two high schools. It's Beverly Hills High School, which you might be a little young, but if you watched a lot of TV in the 90s, and
Mhm.
particularly a certain mediocre show, you kind of tend to have a pretty good idea what you think Beverly Hills High School looks like. And the other school, much less known, is a small charter school in South LA called Animo Pat Brown, almost all Latinx kids. But it's in just north of Compton. And again, if you kind of pay attention to pop culture, movies, music, you tend to have an idea of what life in South LA is like. And, the intention wasn't so kumbaya to say we're all so similar, but the intention, my kind of work, narrative nonfiction, is always to undermine presumptions. And I think these kids certainly undermined a lot of presumptions regarding Beverly Hills and South LA.
It seems like you're really intrigued by people who don't look like you or grew up in a different way than you. I mean, I can think back to that with Rob Peace, when you wrote that book in 2014. So what drives you in terms of putting that out there? And what are some of the challenges in writing about a perspective that you may not be familiar with on your own?
Uh, yeah, thank you. That's a real important question. And it's a hard question because the idea of perspective is it's always been important, but it's increasingly more and more important regarding who gets to tell whose stories in whatever form. And obviously I am a willing participant in an apparatus by which the vast majority of stories in America are told by, overeducated white men like me. So um, it's tricky. And you mentioned Robert Peace. That was a book, sort of a memoir slash biography about a really close friend of mine who died almost 10 years ago now. And that book, I reached out to Rob's family after he died, and we were all struggling to process. And I thought I could just write a little compilation of stories for his high school newsletter, or some 1,000 word piece, just that spoke to his life and not just his death. And that obviously turned into a book. I call it a eulogy that got out of hand. And I didn't know what I was doing then, but I just found that sitting in people's living rooms and on their porches and in their cars and offices, just talking about a person or an idea that you both care about a lot, is a really powerful thing. And I guess to answer your question vis-a-vis this book, Show Them You're Good, where I just hung out with high school kids. One time when I was researching Rob Peace, I was driving around with a really close friend of his who grew up also in really a hard way in Newark, New Jersey. And yeah, I was kind of yammering about this exact topic. Just, is it all right that I'm doing this? I don't look like Rob. I didn't grow up the way Rob grew up. I just lived with him. Who has the right to tell the story, et cetera, et cetera. And his friend Oswaldo got kind of frustrated, a little bit pissed off at me, and we were at a red light, and he said, Jeff, I can't give you absolution. I can't give you permission. But if you would shut up a little bit with your sort of self-gratifying blathering, then I can help you understand. I guess that's sort of a roundabout answer, just to just to be with people. And so in the time since this book has been published, I've written a book about juvenile halls, also a very different environment than one I'm familiar with.
I want to hold up the book here. I got it. It was a great one. Short and Tragic Life of Robert Peace.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. Probably one of my favorite books I've read, last few years, because he just seemed like this fascinating guy. I mean, like you said, growing up in Newark, going to Yale, trying to get out from where he grew up, and it seemed like things were happening. And then unfortunately it was this tragic ending. So just from a personal perspective, what do you miss the most about him, and what should folks know that it gets through when you read the book, but what else should folks know about Robert Peace and his story?
Rob, I miss him. He was a really good guy and a good friend. And it's really nice of you to read the book. I don't know what I would fill in beyond the book, except that I wish he was still around, and I wish my kids knew him. Because yeah.
That's really beautifully said. Yeah, you just seem like a special guy. And you mentioned your kids there, and they'll have the opportunity to read these books as they grow older and they grow up. So what do you want them to know about your work and what Dad has done so far in his career?
I hope maybe someday they'll take me seriously enough to even care about what I do during the day. Again, in this kind of world, we're living in this very compartmentalized world where, it's easy to just spend your time reinforcing what you already think. I hope, maybe they see that I just like to get out and about and be with people.
And you like to learn about different people from yourself too. I think that comes across really nicely. So Jeff, really a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks so much for the great work, and let's chat again down the
Thank
road. All
you
right.
again so much. It was so nice to be with you.